Welcome to today's explainer. We're going to take workplace communication from, just some vague corporate buzzword and transform it into a real, tangible strategic toolkit. Whether you're leading a massive team, launching a startup, or honestly just trying to get a project across the finish line without triggering a dozen confusing email chains, mastering how we share information is absolutely vital. We aren't just talking about fixing grammar or speaking louder here. We're talking about the literal mechanics of how ideas move from one human brain to another in a professional setting. So let's dive right in with a pretty provocative thought. Talking isn't communicating, and transmitting isn't connecting. True communication is a two-way street. It takes deliberate action, not just, aggressively hitting send. Too often, we kind of just assume that because we spoke the words or typed the message out, our job is done. But as you'll see today, talking definitely isn't communicating, and simply firing off data isn't the same thing as actually connecting with your audience. Here's our blueprint for today's explainer. 1. What is true communication? 2. Why communication truly matters. 3. The 5-stage communication process. 4. Choosing your communication channel. And 5. Overcoming barriers to reception. All right, section 1. What is true communication? Let's shatter the illusion of what we actually think communication is. So the formal definition is that communication is the continuous process of imparting, exchanging, or transmitting information, ideas, feelings, and intentions to achieve mutual understanding. Now, I really want to highlight those last two words, mutual understanding. It's not merely speaking or writing at someone. The whole shebang hinges entirely on whether the receiver accurately decodes and interprets your intended meaning. If that shared understanding doesn't happen, well, communication actually hasn't occurred at all. Let's look at a critical distinction here. Information transmission versus effective communication. Information transmission is basically just a one-way data dump. Think of a manager blasting out a massive email broadcast with new safety guidelines. That is just transmission. Effective communication, on the other hand, is a two-way dialogue. It needs a confirmed shared understanding and a solid feedback loop. In that safety email example, communication is actually only complete when those employees confirm they understand the rules and can practically apply them on the floor. Moving on to section 2, why communication truly matters. Let's look at why getting this right is the absolute lifeblood of any organization. Clear communication fundamentally transforms how a business operates, and it does this on 3 major fronts. First up, operational efficiency. When requirements are crystal clear right out of the gate, you practically eliminate duplicated tasks and expensive rework. Second is conflict resolution. Regular check-ins and open dialogue build psychological safety. This prevents, simple resource competition from spiraling into deep personal friction. And third, employee morale. Transparent town hall updates keep staff in the loop during changes, which builds incredible trust and directly alleviates job anxiety. Now, let's look at this through the lens of individual leadership. If you're a leader or an entrepreneur, communication is literally your primary strategic tool. Internally, it's how you translate raw business ideas into actionable strategies, delegate authority, and build an environment where your team actually feels safe proposing new innovations. Externally, it's just as critical. It's how you secure capital by pitching compelling narratives to investors, how you figure out market needs, and how you negotiate favorable terms. Honestly, your ceiling as a leader is exactly equal to your ability to communicate. All right, section 3, the 5-stage communication process. Let's trace the fascinating journey of a single message from inception to reception. Think of the workplace as an obstacle course for your thoughts. Every single message you share has to travel through 5 sequential stages. It starts with the sender's idea, moves to encoding that idea into words or visuals, travels through a channel, gets decoded by the receiver, and finally requires feedback to confirm understanding. The absolutely crucial takeaway here is that an interruption at literally any single point in this chain leads to a total communication breakdown. Let's ground this with a real-world scenario. Imagine a marketing director trying to address a quarterly sales slump. The director is the sender, conceiving the idea to address the shortfall. They encode their thoughts by throwing together a concise slide deck with some visual pie charts. The channel they pick is a live video session with their regional leads. Decoding happens when those leads look at the charts and grasp the severity of the situation. And finally, that feedback loop kicks in when the leads start asking clarifying questions or proposing their own action steps. It's a very precise chain of events. Bringing us to section 4, choosing your communication channel. Because how you send a message matters just as much as what you're sending. We generally rely on 4 core interpersonal methods here. Verbal communication gives us that immediate feedback and a strong personal connection. Written communication, like formal memos or standard operating procedures, provides a precise, permanent record, even if, let's be honest, no one actually reads the whole thing. Nonverbal communication, so our body language and tone, is amazing for conveying subtle emotional context and sincerity. And visual media, like diagrams or flowcharts, is just unmatched when you need to rapidly simplify complex numerical data. When you look at the risks associated with these different channels, it becomes super clear why you always have to align your medium with your intent. For example, there is no way you should ever use email for a sensitive performance appraisal. Email entirely lacks tone, making it dangerously open to misinterpretation, especially when emotions are running high. Sensitive feedback demands the high richness and the immediate nonverbal cues you only get from face-to-face communication. Conversely, you wouldn't drag everyone into a meeting just to lay out a complex 10-page official policy. That definitely requires the structured, searchable archive of a written memo. Finally, Section 5, Overcoming Barriers to Reception. We have to confront the hazards that threaten even our most perfectly selected channels, the noise. So there are numerous factors that influence how a message is received. We're talking cognitive gaps, heavy technical jargon, or even just environmental noise like a crowded open-plan office. But perhaps the trickiest one to navigate is psychological state. An anxious employee might view totally constructive performance feedback as a direct threat to their job security. And this is exactly why senders have to practice strategic empathy. You need to simplify your language, pick the right channel, and actively encourage open-ended feedback by asking things like, hey, what are your main takeaways from what we just discussed? But remember, communication is a two-way dynamic, right? It's not all on the sender. Receivers have a massive responsibility here too. As a receiver, you really have to practice active listening, which means fully focusing on the speaker without interrupting. You have to suspend instant judgment by separating your emotional reactions from the objective facts being presented. And above all, you need to constantly rephrase and paraphrase key points just to verify you actually decoded the message correctly. To wrap up our journey today, mastering organizational communication really demands embracing a few core philosophies. First, it's a continuous two-way process that absolutely dies without a feedback loop. Second, you have to meticulously match your communication channel to the urgency and sensitivity of your message. And third, you have to aggressively minimize the environmental, cultural, and psychological noise that threatens to distort your meaning. I want to leave you with a question to kind of challenge your daily routine. Take a look at your outbox today. The next time you're about to hit send on a super important email or walk away from a critical team meeting, just pause and ask yourself, did I just transmit information into the void, or did I actually communicate? Think about whether your next message will truly bridge the gap of mutual understanding, or if it's just going to add to the ambient noise of the workplace. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.